Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Angela. It's my privilege and honor to give this plenary session on long-acting PrEP implementation, fostering access and equity. I would like to thank the AIDS 22 Organizing Committee for this opportunity. These are my disclosures. Despite major advances in treatment and prevention, the HIV pandemic continues to pose a major public health challenge. By the end of 2021, about 38 million people were living with HIV worldwide, with estimated 1.5 million new infections in that year. By the second quarter of 2022, 2.2 million people had initiated oral PrEP worldwide. Despite evidence of impact on incidence in some settings and populations, we are still far from the global goal. Achievement towards PrEP uptake continue to lag in every region. As such, many people who could benefit from PrEP are still left behind. The total number of people using this prevention option in 2020 was just 28% of the target 3 million in low and middle income countries, which represents just only 8% of the new global 2025 target. Although PrEP is not meant to be a lifelong prevention strategy, high adherence is needed during periods of use when an individual is at risk of HIV, what may be quite challenging to achieve, especially among the most vulnerable. To realize PrEP's benefits, individuals need to both initiate PrEP and remain on PrEP during at-risk periods. In multiple studies, reasons for stopping or never initiating PrEP include, in addition to challenges accessing the medication, low self-perceived risks, concerns about medication effects, stigma, violence, mental health, or competing life events. Long-acting PrEP agents have the potential to address some of these concerns by providing consistent protection through infrequent, discrete administration, avoiding the need to take a daily or on-demand oral medication. A number of long-acting drug delivery platforms are under investigation for HIV prevention, as shown in this table. For the rest of my presentation, I will focus on the two products that are in the pathway for implementation. The dapivirine vaginal ring has been approved for PrEP use in a small number of countries in sub-Saharan Africa and has been granted a favorable review by the European Medicines Agency. Registrational trials of this product show that overall effectiveness ranged for 27 to 35% in preventing new HIV infections. Two subsequent open-label extension studies showed that the increased ring use compared to the phase 3 studies and showing 50% across the two open-label extensions from the phase 3 studies. Several approaches are being pursued to improve the effectiveness and durability of vaginal rings for PrEP. These include creation of a combination device containing both dapivirine and a long-lasting hormonal contraceptive. Long-acting cabotegravir was evaluated in two large phase 3 trials, HPTN-083 and HPTN-084. HPTN-083 was a double-blind, double-dummy randomized controlled trial which assessed the effectiveness of long-acting CAB for PrEP compared to TDF-FTC over 4,500 participants in the US, South America, Asia, and South Africa, and showed a 66% reduction in new infections for those in the CAB arm when compared to active TDF-FTC. With a similar design, HPTN-084 observed an impressive 89% reduction in new infections in the CAB-LA arm compared to the TDF-FTC arm among cisgender women in African countries. Both studies are ongoing in an open-label extension phase. These results led to FDA approval of CAB-LA back in December 2021. Historically, the introduction of evidence-based technologies into public health programs have been fraught with delays that result in missed opportunities for impact. Expanding HIV prevention options need to be done while expanding PrEP coverage, ensuring that the introduction of new PrEP modalities increase access and reduces disparities in PrEP uptake, rather than simply providing alternatives for individuals already engaged in PrEP. The rapid development of implementation science to guide the large-scale adoption of long-acting injectable PrEP will be vitally important to understand the outstanding issues in implementation approaches for populations who urgently need effective prevention choices. The Dapivirine Ring Global Action Plan is a living document that will serve as a consolidated map that describes current and planned activities at the global level to support the ring introduction. Implementation projects such as the Catalyst and Project PrEP will generate essential insights and knowledge of barriers and facilitators to product implementation in sub-Saharan African countries. In this slide, you can see the list of currently planned CAB-LA implementation projects around the globe, still a small list in face of the major need to understand how to best implement this product in the different geographies and cultures for the populations most at need. We will now discuss some of the advantages and barriers related to CAB-LA implementation. Injectable CAB removes the need for potentially stigmatizing daily pill adherence behavior. Other advantages are DOT, less frequent dosing, no impact on gender-affirming hormone therapy on CAB-LA levels, and on the other hand, there may be injection site reactions, drug-drug interactions, rifampin as an example. Injectable CAB is not adequate for Hep B chronically infected individuals and cannot be withdrawn in the event of toxicity. Additionally, at the core of person-centered HIV prevention is the acknowledgement that people are best placed to decide which prevention methods are right for them and that their preference may change over the course of their lives. HIV prevention is effectively communicating information about the advantages and disadvantages of available methods and about product characteristics to facilitate choice and informed decision-making. From an individual level perspective, injectable CAB has great potential for those who struggle most with adherence, but it also requires more frequent clinical visits, and this may impact individuals' access. It also has gluteal injection site issues, such as the impossibility to use it, CAB-LA, in the presence of buttock implants or industrial silicone. It also has, there is unfortunately insufficient safety data at this point on its use during pregnancy and breastfeeding. Increasing provider awareness of PrEP guidelines and enhancing training around prescription practices can make a real difference for implementation. Long-acting prevention has the potential to address some of the achievement gaps that persist with daily oral therapy by expanding the method choice, improving adherence and quality of life. Implementation studies will be critical to address important questions regarding how best to integrate CAB-LA into health systems around the globe, such as aspects related to system capacity, location of service delivery, and tracking of injections, for example. CAB-LA can make HIV diagnosis challenging if HIV infection is not diagnosed before CAB initiation. CAB-LA suppresses viral replication, delaying antibody production. As such, rapid tests and antigen antibody assays may fail to detect infection. Supplemental antibody tests may be negative or indeterminate for many months, and HIV RNA levels often remain low or undetectable for long periods. The delayed detection of HIV infection may lead to delayed ART initiation and the emergence of integrase resistance. More evidence is required to better quantify and understand this. Of 20 HIV infections identified in the groups randomized to CAB-LA in the 2 efficacy studies following the primary analysis, 7 cases of breakthrough infections were identified, all of them in HPTN-083. These events are rare, but still remain unexplained. Of the 20 infections identified in the CAB-LA arms across both studies, integrase resistance mutations were found in 7 cases, again, all in HPTN-083. Very importantly, there were no documented cases of integrase resistance that occurred following no recent CAB exposure. It's important for programs and countries to select a testing strategy and algorithm that promotes access to CAB-LA among those who would benefit most, and not that work against the potential user. While the inclusion of molecular HIV tests might prevent a small number of cases of drug resistance, the feasibility of this strategy needs to be very carefully considered. Requiring molecular testing will delay PrEP initiation, introduce a complex lab-based algorithm and decision-making to establish HIV infection, and will significantly increase costs, service delivery complexity, and therefore fewer people will likely access CAB-LA. Surveillance for integrase resistance and subsequent response to integrase-based ART should be performed during CAB-LA PrEP rollout to further inform policy. Very importantly, preliminary results from a very elegant mathematical model of rapid scale-up of PrEP and nearly complete switch to CAB-LA in sub-Saharan Africa, developed by Andrew Phillip and his group, suggested that CAB-LA would result in a 27% reduction in HIV incidence, and also the reduction in the number of people living with HIV, but will result in an increase in absolute number of people living with integrase-resistant HIV. However, despite this, CAB-LA was predicted to lead to a decrease in HIV-related mortality. During the last days, we have seen important steps forward for CAB-LA implementation. WHO has released just excellent guidelines that recommend that CAB-LA be offered as an additional HIV prevention option for people at substantial risk of HIV infection. In this map, you can see in dark blue the countries where CAB-LA was filed for registration. It is a start, but there is still a long way to go. The Coalition to Accelerate Access to Long-Acting PrEP is a new initiative that brings together leading donors, agencies, and advocates to ensure an accelerated, equitable, accessible, and a sustainable and collaborative approach to making long-acting PrEP options accessible as quickly and as equitably as possible. VIV Healthcare and the Medicines Patent Pool announced that they have signed a voluntary licensing agreement for patents relating to CAB-LA for HIV PrEP to help enable access in least developed, low-income, lower middle-income, and sub-Saharan African countries. Through this agreement, 3 selected generic manufacturers will have the opportunity to develop, manufacture, and supply generic versions of CAB-LA for PrEP in 90 countries, subject to required regulatory approvals. This map shows in blue the 90 countries listed in the MPP-VIV CAB-LA for PrEP voluntary license. On top of this, sales outside the licensed territory are allowed in the countries where no patents were filed, including the countries shown in purple. Although this announcement represents a potential game-changing moment in HIV prevention, generics won't reach the market for a few years. Until then, affordable bridging prices must be agreed upon so that this product can actually reach people immediately. Also, the license needs to evolve to encompass technology transfer to shorten the time for generic availability as fast as possible. With the current direct and indirect territorial coverage included in this licensing deal, there are still far too many people left behind, including those who stand to benefit the most from this scientific advancement. My own country, Brazil, with well-established generic manufacture capacity, is completely out of any possibility to produce or purchase generics when they become available, and access relies solely on a price agreement to be negotiated between the producer and our government. Having multiple quality-assured suppliers is critical to affordable pricing and adequate supply. Inequalities are a major driver of the HIV epidemic, which continues to disproportionately burden vulnerable populations despite the availability of effective preventive and therapeutic interventions. Our current models of HIV prevention delivery are not responding to the need of these populations. The gaps in HIV responses and resulting HIV infections and AIDS-related deaths lie upon faultiness of inequality. The most vulnerable populations struggling with poverty and social inequalities are the ones that suffer the most from HIV. May long-acting PrEP not deepen the already profound inequalities. On the contrary, may it be a step forward in our efforts against the inequalities. I would like to thank all my friends and colleagues listed here for their collaboration and support. Thank you very much for your attention.